Future Market has thousands of board games at discounted prices. Click the direct link below for Patterns, a Mandala game, or any other game.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, once again, it's all about these beautiful mandalas that we're going to be building. But today, we're not playing Mandala the card game, we're playing Patterns, a Mandala game. This is sort of a sequel to the original Mandala card game by the same designers, Trevor Benjamin and J Gilbert. I love it when sequels are made and they're from the same designers. I don't like it when sequels or spin-offs are made and they use a different designer and they're trying to paste something on. This came from the original designers. I like that. Very similar, but also very different. So let me show you how it is similar or different. I'll see you on the other side, tell you what I think.
In Patterns, a Mandala game, you're going to be collecting certain colors of mandalas, and each of those are going to be worth a certain amount of points. You'll be collecting them in this order left to right. So the first color you establish is going to be 1 point, second one 2, and third. So every yellow one you collect is going to be worth 6 points, for example, and that's basically how you score. So for example, at the bottom here, at the end of the game, this is what it might look like. I'll have 2 yellows there on the right. Each of those is worth 6 points, so that's 12 points. 2 greens are worth 5 each, that's another 10 points, but those 2 reds at the left, they're only each worth 1 point. Whoever has the most points at the end is the winner, so you're trying to basically capture the colored mandalas that have the higher points and have more points than their opponent. And this is what it might look like at the beginning of the game, where basically we have all of the mandalas up there. This is called face up because they have sand. If they're face down, they are basically committed, they're part of a color group. So what are you trying to do here? So each player is going to start with 1 mandala, and at the beginning of the game, you're going to take this, and one thing you can do is create a new color group. That's establishing a group that you don't have that color of yet. So I'm going to establish red because that's what I started with. There is some strategy a little bit as to which one you pick here to start with. But so what I'm going to do is replace one of these that are here with this. The one that I picked here is now going to come. This essentially is going to be at this point, could be the next color that I start. Now because I started that color, I'm going to place my number 1 on it. This means that reds are always going to be 1 point. This is going to come down here and remind me that reds are worth 1 point. Then it'll be the opponent's turn. So maybe they actually replace this one with this, and they make this their first group. So it's 1 here, and so they're doing black, and they're kind of like right next to me. Now you'll notice that I have a black one here. I can't go in here and put a black one next to this because you can never have both players having the same color group touching, so they do have to be separated a little bit. It'll be my 2-point color group. That might be a good idea because now there's a bunch of black ones there like that. And the next player might say, hey, you know what? I'm going to swap this with this because it's next to a bunch of blues, and they're going to make this their 2-pointer just like that. Now so far all I've shown is creating new color groups, but you can expand color groups. You can do that by one of 2 ways. One is by simply flipping one of these. It has to be next to your color group, it has to be the same color, and you can flip it. So what this did, this just essentially got me 2 points. Now at the end of the game, you don't actually count this one as 2 points. This one doesn't count anything, but it's every other adjacent one that's face down as part of this group is gonna get me 2 points. So that move just got me exactly 2 points. So let's say the other player does something similar. This is their 2-pointer, they flip this, and that essentially got them 2 points for the end of the game. But they should have probably flipped this one instead because, look at this, I have a green. So what I can do is swap this with this, putting a green there, cutting them off. They could have flipped that one and I couldn't have touched it because once it's face down like this, you can't touch it. So I basically now cut off their thing. They can't flip that one anymore because it's green. And I've set myself up now. This is my 3-pointers, and I've got a bunch of 3s here. So in my future turns, I can start flipping these, but they might have a way of cutting me off. For example, if I did this, they might come in here and they might go like this. And so now they are working on this and cutting me off. So there's a lot of defensive things going on here. So you're either flipping to get points or you're swapping, and sometimes you're doing multiple swaps. Now let's just say it was my turn. You can do things for sort of chaining things together. So I'm gonna put this here, and I'm gonna take this and swap it with this one. So what this does is that's now going to be my 4-pointer, the dark blue. Let's say the next opponent flips this one to add to that group. Now this is not bad because I've got some here. If I flip this, it's 4 points. Next turn, flip this, it's 4 points, right? But there's other things you can do too. Now let's say the board looked like this. Sometimes you can chain things together. Like I have this green. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap this with this blue one right here. Now I already have blue as a color. I have it right here. Now let's say the other player goes, and let's just say it's my turn again, and I have this. So I got this blue, I already have this color. I can't make another color group of this. I already have it, right? And so now I can replace something else. So now I can replace it with this. Look at this, I just added to this color group, and next turn now I can flip this. So you can sort of chain things together like that. And now next turn I can actually start a new one if I want to. But again, showing you just my turns, maybe instead of starting a new color group in a certain spot, what I will do is do something like this. I'll take this and I'll start this one here. So now this is my 5-pointer, right? Now this is good because I've got some here. Now again, I'm not showing you the opponent's turns, I'm not doing anything right now, I'm just showing you what different things that you can do. So now I've got this blue down here, and so now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna swap it with this yellow. I've just now turned something in to get something that I can already now score, then getting me my last 6-point color at the same time, which is, so you can chain a lot of things together in this game. So generally speaking, that's how you play the game. The game ends as soon as any player cannot make a legal move. If you can make one, you have to. At that point, the game ends, but the other player gets to flip anything that is adjacent to a color group that they can flip of the same color. Then you added up all the points as shown at the tops and bottoms of the map that you see here. Whoever has the most is the winner.
Okay, let me just preface this by saying the original Mandala game I absolutely love. It was one of my favorite 2-player games. It is one of my favorite games. I think I did one, last time I did my top 100 games of all time, I think it was 14. Like, crazy. I love Mandala. So going into this, it's, sometimes expectations can kill a game for you. I had huge expectations for this. However, after reading the rules, as I'll get to later, I wasn't expecting to like it more than the original Mandala. So I wanted to set those biases up front, because that's the lens that I'm looking at this through. So what I like about this, I often talk about my depth to complexity ratio, meaning how deep is a game, how tough are the decisions, how many decisions are there, versus how complex is it. This game is off the charts depth to complexity ratio. It means it has tons of depth, not a lot of complexity. And complexity, I mean just a bunch of minutia, a bunch of procedural things, a bunch of mechanisms that don't need to be there. This game's not complex. You're doing one of two things. You're either putting a new color out on the board, or you're expanding a color group. That's it. It's super simple mechanically, but oh my goodness gracious, is this game a brain burner abstract game, a no luck game. I mean, the only luck in the game is the randomized setup. After that, zero luck. This is abstract strategy at its best. The game has like a bell curve arc to it, which is very interesting. Like in the original Mandala, like you're setting yourself up to try to get the last 2 colors that you score, which are worth the most points, 5 and 6, and you're trying to get a bunch of those at the end. Here, just because of the nature of the game, of the abstract game, and going against each other with the same sort of tableau, it has sort of a bell curve where, like, the beginning, you're going to get the early groups are basically going to be ones that are set up well from the randomized setup. But when you're scoring those, you're only going to be scoring like 1 or 2 points because those are the first colors that both of you are going for, right? So you'll be getting more things scored, but total there'll be less because the score for each of those is less, 1 or 2 points. Then towards the middle game, you're starting to get colors that are going 3 and 4 points per thing. And generally, you're going to be maybe getting less of those than the 1 and 2 point tokens. Hopefully not, because this is, the bell curve is like, this is where you get the majority of your points usually in this game, in my experience. It's like the 3 or 4 range, because there's still a decent amount of ways to get multiple tiles in there, and they're scoring 3 or 4 points. Where by the time you get to the 5 or 6 point ones, if you're playing well and the other player's playing well, you're not going to get a lot of those. So it's almost this interesting bell curve where it feels very different from the original Mandala, where it had like a linear climb to the better scores, where this is like, no, you're probably going to score the most on your 3 and 4 if you're both playing well, in my experience. Different feel, but interesting. I like that when you're expanding, I said you could add a color group or expand a color group. When you're expanding, you've got 2 choices. You can just simply flip a tile, getting points for it, or swapping. Now, when you're flipping, this is interesting. Many reasons why you want to do this. Sometimes you just want to flip because, hey, you're close to one of their other color groups, and if you flip, you're kind of blocking them from being able to then swap and cut you off. So sometimes you're doing it defensively. Granted, you're getting points, so it is an offensive move, but it's also a defensive move because you're trying to cut off the abilities of them to be able to cut you off, if you say. Sometimes you're flipping because you're like, you know what? The board state isn't exactly where I want right now. Let me let them possibly change the board state a little bit by watching them swap. So maybe you slow play it. Maybe you're flipping to slow play to let the board the opportunities change a little bit. Or maybe sometimes you're doing that to set up a swap, because as you're flipping, you're giving yourself more possible areas that you can swap with, because when you swap, you have to swap with something that's adjacent to one of your other color groups. So you're flipping to get points. You're flipping for defensive to make sure you don't get blocked. But you're also flipping to give yourself more opportunities to then swap, which is really cool. Now, when you're swapping, sometimes you're swapping to score. Of course, you're putting your tile down there, and you know you're going to score that, and you're pulling that tile that you swapped with back. That's the next one you're putting down. Now, sometimes you're doing it just for scoring. Sometimes you're doing it to set up just your next turn. And other times you're chaining together multiple swaps. Because you can be like, oh, I'm going to swap this, that was my 1-point color, to get this other 3-point color that now I'm going to be able to swap and get an additional 5-point color, right? And so you do this chaining events where you can like carefully craft ways for you to up your score, point after point after point. As it gets towards the end of the game, there's less opportunities. It is so interesting. It's hard to explain, hard to sort of show. It's just one of those games that organically you're going to have to like see and feel and experience. But it's very interesting how you can use the swap. Again, you can use the flip for multiple strategies. You can use the swap for multiple strategies. There is so much depth here for just such a simple game. I'm blown away by it. This game is familiar to Mandala. The scoring is basically the same, how you score. But it is a very different game. This is that no-luck abstract game. Now, the things that this game is definitely not for everybody because it's so heavily abstract. Now, here's the negatives. At first glance, I read the rules for this late last year, and it's one of those games where you read the rules, it's really hard to picture how the game is going to play out. Not a lot of games are like that. So at first glance, either by reading the rules or even just by being taught the game and seeing how it works on this overview, it might not draw you in. So I think at times, people that might really like this game might not be drawn in because it's like, but again, because it's great pedigree, because it's a sequel to a great game, it had merit. I wanted to try it out, and I'm glad I did because I actually like this game better than I thought I was going to, based off the rules that I had read. Now, did I like it as much as I thought I was going to based upon how much I liked the original Mandala? That's when it comes down to expectations. I didn't think I was going to like this one better than Mandala because it's my 14th favorite game of all time. And I can say I probably don't like this one more than Mandala. However, I like it way more than I thought I was going to. And I think the game is absolutely fascinating, and I think it's one that you could play forever and still not get great at it because there's so much going on with how easy it is. Now, because of this, new players can corner themselves. It's an abstract game, right? And sometimes the game ends when you cannot make a legal play. Well, sometimes because of a swap or because your color group that you've created earlier might be in a corner, there might be a time where you make a move and you're like, oh my gosh, I just cornered myself and I have no legal move. The game's gonna end now. So new players it's unforgiving. You can totally hose yourself in this game if you're not experienced at it, and that can be frustrating to new players. On another side, experienced players can be up in an early game and purposely set themselves up to end the game. They don't typically want to do that because then the other player gets to flip basically everything that they can to score. So you're probably not going to win, but there might be some times where you might be able to use that to your advantage, which would be like an advanced strategy. The game might be too mean for some because, yes, you're trying to figure out the best things for you, but this game, you can be very mean and start cutting people off and blocking the other player and doing certain things to make it very frustrating for them. So it might be too mean for some. Also, in these no-luck strategy games, abstract games, the experienced players are always going to have a large scoring gap than other players, which means when you play with a new player, if you're experienced, you're either going to crush them or you're going to have to play, a handful of games to the point where they're like competitive. And so if you don't mind putting in that time to raise up a new player so you can play competitively with somebody in this game, that's great. But just know you're not going to pull this off the shelf knowing how to play it well and teach it to anyone. And again, you're just going to crush them, which isn't fun for you or them, or you're going to spend time with them, which won't be fun at first, but it will be because you'll be teaching someone and then they'll be able to play it. So big, experience and scoring gap in this until you're playing with experienced players. Those are the negative things and the positive things. I love this game. I love it. It's fascinating because of the depth here and because it has that Mandala scoring. Even though I don't like it quite as much as the breezy card game that has a bite, I still really love this. And for all those reasons, let's get into Saxophone Serenade. It's being inducted to my gaming library, so let's hit it. Game
Game Toppers upgrades every game you play, and if you missed their 4.0 Kickstarter, you can still late pledge and take advantage of over 40 unlocked stretch goals and early fulfillment. This campaign featured a new Young Sherlock table, perfect for children's gaming, and movable coffee table, 10 new thematic mats by top artists like Vincent Dutray, a new designer art series Minecraft topper with thematic art from Brent Woodside, and some of the best package deals they've had, including game mat bundles. Go to GameToppersLLC.com or click the link below to late pledge now.